Welcome to the other side of 40. My name is April Grant, and I'm here to help women make positive changes with their lives after the age of 40. Let the other side of 40 become your community to find inspiration and support to start the next chapter of your life. Hello, and today we welcome Cachet Prescott, who thrives on helping others move from where they were to where they want to be. Tapping into her social sciences and teaching background, she supports clients in taking charge of how they move and show up in the world by helping them shift their thoughts, perspectives, habits, words, and actions. On her podcast, All Things Unlearned, Cachet focuses on helping others use unlearning as a powerful tool for personal growth and transformation. And she shares the personal unlearning journeys of people from all walks of life. So welcome, Cachet. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you today?
It's a day. But no, everything's good over here. So as I start out with, did you have an awakening moment, and tell us about it?
Oh, I definitely did. I think I had a similar moment to many of us where in my mid-30s, probably around 35-ish, I was just kind of feeling like, I don't know what's going on, but this ain't it. Whatever it was, this wasn't it. And I was feeling kind of a loss of identity for a variety of reasons. I'm married to the military, so my husband's in the military, and in the military, my identity was just mil spouse, just his wife.
Right.
We have 3 daughters together, and so I was their mother. And as a function of being a part of this military life, my career wasn't in a place and space where I wanted it to be. Just because, a lot of the places we went to, there weren't a lot of just great job opportunities for a variety of reasons. And so my career plays second fiddle to his. And it took a toll on me because I'm a pretty ambitious person. When I met my husband, I was in a PhD program. I didn't end up finishing it, nothing to do with him. It was just my personal choice not to finish that program. But when we moved to Montana, which was our first base, I was working at Barnes & Noble just to get out the house.
Right.
Because I couldn't find any opportunities. And I'm not knocking Barnes & Noble because I love the bookstore. But I didn't go to school to do that. I had aspirations of doing other things. And so after, I swear it seemed like a series of unfortunate events where I would start a job and it would be the position would be eliminated, or I would start at another place and they would close the office. I felt like the professional closer for places. I felt like I was a bad luck charm for these places.
Or maybe that was an indication to do something else.
And that's exactly what it was. But at the time, I was in the thick of it. I was in my feelings.
Right.
So I took it personally. I was just like, okay, what's wrong with me? And so I got to the point where I was just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired. And one thing that came out of it was this kind of journey into entrepreneurship. It was, they say necessity is the mother of invention. So I decided to create my own portable career opportunity doing the stuff that I love to do. And that was back in 2011.
Okay.
And which was great. But it wasn't the answer. It was part of the answer.
Okay.
And I was learning that there were still some things inside that I needed to address that I wasn't addressing. Just a variety of things, I'm an introvert. And so personality wise, there were some things that affected me that I didn't even realize affected me to the degree that they did, just my interactions with people. So I had to do some serious soul searching and assessment and just kind of figuring out, learning me.
Right.
And that's been, I'm 41 at this point. That's been 6 years in the making of really learning myself. And that's where the whole idea of my podcast came along, with this whole idea of unlearning, because there have been some things that I'd learned along the way that just weren't serving me and the person that I want to be today or want to be in the future.
Right.
And it's simple things like the way I communicated. Sometimes I allowed myself to kind of hide in the background. In some capacities, I will be right out there and up front. And, when it's teaching or doing a workshop, I have no problem doing it. But in other instances, there were moments where I would shrink from conversations that needed to be had. And as a result, it created unnecessary tension with me and people, or it allowed people to believe that they could I taught them how to treat me, basically.
Yes,
So
I'm relating to everything you're saying right now.
I taught them that it's okay to ignore her. It's okay to disrespect her. She didn't say anything about it. So,
right.
And so I didn't realize that my avoidance of confrontation was having such a negative effect on me. I thought it was just this place and space where, okay, I don't like drama. I'm just going to stay away from it.
Yeah.
But again, I taught these people that, okay, she's not going to say anything. So it's all right for me to say what I want to her or say what I want about her. She's not going to say anything about it.
And she's not going to care. And she's still going to be my friend. And she's still going to come back. And she will still be okay.
Ding, ding, ding. And that was a problem because that couldn't be further from the truth. Right. But they didn't know that because I didn't really and truly have the courage to say the things that needed to be said, have the conversations that needed to be had. So another thing was a few years ago, probably at this point, about 3 years ago, a close family friend sat me down and she said to me basically that I'm always offended about things. And I was thrown off guard when she said it. Right. First, I was offended that she said it.
I'm going to start out being offended, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then because I'm a learner by nature, and because I also don't say anything in the moment, I let her talk.
Yeah.
And she said it in a place of love. So she wasn't coming at me in a disrespectful way. She wasn't coming at me in a crazy way. She really did come from a place of love. But once I left that conversation, I really had to sit with self, and it was uncomfortable. Yeah. But because I'm a learner, I also went and got a book to really learn more about it from a biblical perspective. And there's this book called The Bait of Satan.
The Bait of Satan?
The Bait, like BAIT, of Satan. And it really talks about this whole idea of offense and how toxic it is for you when you live in this place and space of always being offended by everything that everyone says. Right. And when I read that book, I was just like, oh my gosh, why are you talking about me in this book? It was just like, oof.
Like, how you know my life?
Exactly. I was like, really though? You don't have to go and do me like that. And it's not that you shouldn't feel a way when people do disrespect you. It's not that you shouldn't feel a way if there's something that's done that you don't agree with. You are absolutely entitled to feel how you feel about a situation. It's when you let it rule you, when you give those emotions that power, that offense, that power, and how you move, and you let it really hold on to you. You hold on to that resentment, you hold on to that bitterness, you hold on to that offense, and you won't let it, you can't shake it loose. That's when the problem comes into play. And that's what I was allowing to happen to me. And I was offended by a lot of things. There were some things, I had a right to be offended by. There's some things, it's just like, it's not that deep. It's not that serious. And since then, it has really transformed in me and how I move and what I pay attention to or what I let hold my attention. I don't always jump to the conclusion that somebody's doing something to offend me now. Okay. I try to see things from their perspective, and I also try to see my role in the situation. I'm a human being. I don't do it perfectly, but I do try to not assume the worst in people anymore and their intention. So,
yeah, I mean,
that's a few of the things.
I mean, it's just really hard to hold a relationship with somebody when you expect the worst or think that they're out to get you. And if they are out to get you, then they really need not be in your life. But if you really think if you don't think they're really out to get you, then you got to kind of treat them as people, fallible humans that make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
sometimes that's hard because you have
Very.
to you have to forgive and release a lot of perceived slights,
Mm,
and
mm.
to move forward in the relationship. So I feel you, girl. I feel you.
And
So,
oftentimes it's not even, even if they are trying to slight you, sometimes you just gotta just brush it off, because it's just like, you know what, this says more about you as a person than it does me a person
right.
and as a person. And so when I keep that perspective, I'm just like, okay, you can say what you want. I don't need your validation. And that
Right.
was part of the issue. I was seeking a lot of external validation then.
Mm.
And now I'm in a place and space where it's not as important. Again, not perfect, because, sometimes I'm like, okay, I like when people say those things, but
Yeah.
I'm much more aware of the fact that I don't need everybody to agree with how I'm moving in this world, what I'm doing in this world. It's not that important. So
Yeah. Oh, awesome. So tell us more about how you basically came to the realization that you want to either start the podcast, or how you unlearned, because your process seemed to be about unlearning. What are you
absolutely.
unlearning, and what are you focusing on with people and helping them how to unlearn? I know I asked like 4 questions, but but just tell us all about that.
All the things.
All the things.
So again, the seeds were planted for this podcast with my own personal situation and my own process of unlearning, but I didn't know that's what it was even called. I didn't have a word for it. I know it was something that was happening for me, but I didn't have the language for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the past few years, probably the past 2 years, I really wanted to start a podcast, and I came up with amazing ideas, outlined them, fleshed them out, all that good stuff, like I always do, and never moved to action.
I feel
And
you.
now I know it was because those weren't the podcasts I was supposed to do.
Yes.
This was the one that I was supposed to do.
Yes.
But I was frustrated because I was just like, I have these ideas, and I got my Evernote, and I have workflowy, and I got the outline, and I have the people I want to invite, and I never did anything with it.
Yeah.
And the unlearning theme started to kind of come to mind because, I do professional development workshops. I'm a mindset coach. So I talk to people about mindset and what role that plays in their success, because oftentimes it's the stuff in our head that stops us from moving forward, myself included.
Right.
And so when I was doing a workshop on communication, it was effective communication workshop. I came out of nowhere. I just decided to ask people about their communication habits that they grew up with. We started having conversations about that, how they learn to communicate, how that formed who they are as adults,
Mm-hmm.
in the way they communicate. And so then we talked about that, had really good conversations surrounded about that, around that area. And then I thought about the question, okay, so how have those habits done you a disservice at this point?
Right.
What are some of the things that you learned when you were younger, whether it be from parents, family, schools, peers, whatever? What are some of those things that you learned that no longer serve you as a person now? How are some of those things getting in the way? And that conversation was so good and really got the wheels churning in my head. And this was earlier this year at the start of 2020, where I had that workshop. And then I just started thinking about it, and I don't know where I heard the term unlearn, but it just came up. And
Right.
then another podcast that I really like was called Jesus and Jollof, with Lovey Ajayi and Yvonne Orji.
Okay.
They had their season 3 premiere, and their season 3 was called The Unlearning. And I'd already been thinking about the podcast at this time, but then I heard the trailer for their podcast, and I was like, And so it felt like confirmation, like, okay, this might be a topic that could be an interesting topic. And so once I had already decided to do the podcast at that point, but when I heard that,
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, okay, I feel like I am onto something. But of course, part of the process is unlearning the fear and the doubt that comes along with that. Because I immediately went to, okay, they're already talking about this. They have an
Right.
established audience,
Right.
people that are already following them. And I don't want people to think that I'm copying. And I had to have a conversation with self and
Right.
said, okay, Shay, that's my alter ego, Shay. and just really talk about the fact that yeah, they're talking about it, but it's like that whole analogy about small business. People are saying that, well, I can't do this because markets are oversaturated and people are already doing this. But if you go down the bread aisle at the supermarket or the grocery store, you see
There's
how
30
many
different types of
bread.
brand. Yep.
So don't let that stop you. And so I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. There are other podcasts that exist on the topic of unlearning. You know how many other entrepreneurial podcasts there are out there?
Thousands.
Yeah, you can't let that stop you. And then also, this is your spin on it. This is your perspective on it.
And your voice, yes, your voice and the
your
way
voice.
you will relate to people
Absolutely.
differently than other people will relate to the
Absolutely.
different speakers. Like you can hear two podcasts on the exact same subject, and one you're like, oh, that was really good, and the other one go, not so good. this isn't a hot one. And it's the same subject, it's the same matter. You might have even gotten the same information out of it, but because you didn't relate to that person, you didn't get the fullness of it.
Absolutely. And that's what, again, I had to tell Shay, calm down. We gonna do this. And so once I had that quick moment with self, it was on. And it felt like all the pieces just kind of fell into place because, like I said, this was the topic I was supposed to move on. I love the topic of, I'm a learner by nature, but just to look at it just from this different angle, because with unlearning, it's a form of learning, but when we think about learning, we just think about all the information we just want to add to the plate. But the issue is sometimes we're adding information to a faulty, what they call a mental model, your existing base of learning or existing base of information. Right. So if that's faulty in some way, shape, or form, but you're just adding information on top of that, you're still not going to get the results that you want to get.
Yes. Yeah. My husband and I talk about it. He read some book and they called it reprogramming. But it's the same process of unlearning what you thought was correct and learning new processes because
absolutely.
It's the foundation is faulty. You can't build a house on sand. You got to build a house on concrete. Now the house may stand on sand until something happens. So you may think it's an okay house because it's standing for a long, we just had this long discussion probably 2 weeks ago.
I love this.
About, he's like, you can build the house on the sand and it may be a great house and it may even stand. So you have the facade and you think that it is a beautiful house and it's doing great because it's still standing. You're like, I built it. It's still standing. It's been years. Nothing's happened. And then all you need is one little shake, one little earthquake, and your house crumbles or falls into the pit. And that's it. And all that work you built, all that pretty stuff you put on top of the foundation is now gone. And it's just because you didn't have a strong foundation for it. You just had whatever you learned, because we all come from parents who gave us good things and gave us bad things. And we've internalized it. And a lot of times we don't even process what we were given.
No.
Was incorrect programming. And we have to address it, unlearn it, and replace it with good stuff.
Absolutely. That is the perfect analogy. And tell your husband I'm stealing that. I'm sorry.
Listen, in the conversation, he used it like 4 times. So I'm sure he was very proud of this analogy. So I'm sure he'll be all right.
It couldn't be more perfect though, because like you said, it will stand on the faulty foundation. Yeah. But just because it's standing doesn't mean that it's structurally sound.
Correct.
Safe.
Exactly.
And like you said, just that little something, that little gust of wind that comes along and just knocks it completely off its foundation.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why I felt this conversation on unlearning was so important.
It is.
Because I too had that faulty foundation, and it's not to say that some of the things I learned didn't serve me at a different stage of my life.
Correct.
Because it might have served me then. It just doesn't serve me now, and who I want to be today, and who I want to be in the future. So those are the things I want people to kind of really take a look at and assess, myself included. And I think there's so much to unlearn, no matter what age you are. I'm going to be interviewing a 13-year-old girl about unlearning and limitations in her life. There's so much to learn from people in their situations and their journeys. And that was the motivation behind this podcast. And like I said, selfishly speaking, this is the podcast that I wanted to hear. And so I created the platform. And so I'm really excited about having those conversations.
Well, I mean, ultimately I think my journey for podcasting is the same. I actually did have a start probably about 4 years ago. It lasted maybe 8 episodes and then dropped off. And I had the same thing, lots of notes, lots of ideas. And it wasn't until I hit upon this one and really it was a confirmation of talking to other women, because I felt I guess I would say I felt alone. I had my awakening moment last year, and it caused a lot of turmoil in the house. Me and my husband, had a lot of issues because I'm trying to be a new person, and
absolutely,
he's completely okay with the person I was. So he's like, "Why do you need a change?" And I started talking to other women because I'm like, this feels so weird. Like, how do you just wake up one day or even over a slow period of time and just want to be someone that you haven't been? And I started talking to women and they're like, yep, I had that too. And this is what I did with it. This is what I did with it. And I love the idea that people and women are making changes, because I just feel like we focus so much on the youth and we need to focus more on the rest of our lives, because it's very easy for us to be alive for another 40 years. So in your mindset and development training, can you give us some of things that you feel that are often some of the things that people need to unlearn?
Oh boy.
Just maybe 2 or 3. You don't have to give me a long list. I'm sure there's a lot, but if you could just give me like 2 or 3, so people listening can kind of start getting in their head of what they may want to consider unlearning.
So one thing that comes to the top of mind is the whole idea of this compare and despair, or the comparison trap. Because we have so much access to people's lives on social media, and we see what people have going on at all points in times in their life, whether it's real or fake,
Right.
We don't know. We see the highlight reels oftentimes. I find that a lot of people are, I need to unlearn that comparison stuff, because it's so easy to get caught up in what someone else is doing, or what we perceive to be someone else's situation, or how they're succeeding. Even with us as podcasters, in our podcasting groups, oftentimes people are like, yes, I got, 10,000 downloads, or blah, 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 blah.
Right.
We don't know what it took to get to that point.
Right.
All we see is 10,000 downloads, and you might look at your podcast and you may have 100 downloads, and you're like, oh, and woe is me, and blah, 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 blah. And it's so easy to start to beat up on yourself from a lack of information. You don't know the whole story of what it took to get to those 10,000 downloads. You don't know how much time it took. You don't know their processes. You don't know what resources they had available to them. You just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do a side note on that. Sure. I have a very good friend who started a podcast maybe 3 weeks before I did, and she hit the 1,000 download mark. And I was like, I'm so happy for you, but I'm so jealous. And she's like, don't be, because that's, she's a very positive person. She's like, don't be. And I was also still saying it out of love. Yeah, but, absolutely. She has a very strong following on Instagram and her email list. She emails out every week. I'm just starting to email people. I have the list and it just sits there. And, I'm starting a brand new, she did most of it on her not her personal, but her previous Instagram feed. So she's promoting it more, which had, 15, I think she has 15 to 20,000 followers. And, and I've got like 200 followers. And so, it really, and when it comes to comparison, it's like, over what time, where she's starting from. And
exactly.
I know in my heart that I'm not that kind of jealous. I'm not like, oh my gosh, she got it and I didn't. It was just like, oh, I'll be there. And I know I'll be there. I mean, my numbers are climbing and I'm perfectly happy with where they are. And the last episode, I think, got the most amount of listens. So, we're building, and I can see that people are going back and listening to other things. But it's really understanding all of that part was part of the reason. And I did do the research because of that, because I need to settle my spirit, because even though I already knew mentally what she had, that she had more of that, I needed to like really just like look at it. I was like, okay, April, here you go. She's got 15,000 Instagram followers. She posted it on this page. She's going to have more hits on that page than you would on your 200 person page. And, things like that, just really walking myself back from being jealous, being envious. I don't really want to be envious. I love my girlfriend and I'm happy for her and I want to get there too, but it's just, my process just is different.
Exactly. And it's all about perspective.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of us make space for that perspective, myself included, because, even though I can talk about it, you still feel that twinge.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I felt. I felt the twinge and I had to talk myself off that ledge.
Exactly. But it also lends to another area of learning that I see a lot of is that imposter syndrome, because you see these people doing so well, you see them thriving, you see them having these perceived successes. And like you said, she has the 15 to 20,000 followers, and on yours you have the 200 at this point in time.
Right.
And myself included, I before this haven't really made a lot of use of social media, so my followings, my numbers are not that high.
Right.
A few hundred on Instagram and maybe like 1,300 followers on Facebook. So it's not like people are clamoring to my page for, with bated breath to get information.
Right.
And when I'm posting, there's a few likes. So, and it's just kind of like, okay, that's disheartening at times, because it's just like, if you post something like about the podcast, or if you post something that, you think is important and you get these 5 likes, it's just like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not as qualified to do this as I thought I was. And you start having all these conversations in your head. And I tell people it's always about the stories in your head that will really either make or break you, because they will either push you forward or hold you back. And but you're in control of what that looks like.
Definitely. And having been actually on social media for a few years now, it's a very different thing to try to put yourself out there and realizing, and you also have to start to realize that when you're putting that information out there, your friends and family may not be your actual audience. The people who are going to get the most from your product or service or your speakings. So you can't put it on them to say, because that's been a huge, Facebook group discussion of how come I get no likes for, my business stuff, but for my personal stuff, I get a ton of likes. It's like, but it's just your friends and family. Like,
exactly.
You didn't
That's what they're interested
in. You didn't cultivate them as potential customers. They're just people and they just may not be interested. Some people hear Unlearning and they may have the idea that I don't need to unlearn anything. So everything I got is great. So I don't need to unlearn anything. So I'm not paying attention to that. That doesn't mean they don't need it. Doesn't mean they couldn't learn from it. But in their head, that's not for them.
That doesn't apply to me.
And it doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply.
Yeah.
So, but you can't take offense to that. But it's so hard because we are a society of likes and heart symbols and
Absolutely.
shares and comments and tracking the analytics and, you know, the effectiveness of it all. And you really want to make sure that you're being effective. And then you get stuck because you're like, maybe I don't deserve it because nobody's doing it, instead of changing your mindset and saying, maybe I need to start talking to new people or different people.
Exactly. And that's why I went ahead and created the All Things Unlearned, the community, the Facebook group, because just like you said, my friends and family may or may not be my ideal audience. There may be some people that really hear this idea and love it in my friends and family. And there may be some people in the audience that are just kind of like, okay, anyway, and that's okay.
It's okay. It's completely okay.
Absolutely okay. I want whomever it is to be engaged in the conversations. I want whomever it is to really be excited about the conversation like I am. And so, but again, it's just continuous conversations with self when it comes to these things. And you mentioned the third thing I was going to say.
Oh, I did.
As far as unlearning, is that external validation, those likes, those thumbs ups, those everything that we get from social media or we get from other people. You know, it could be the reliance on the external validation that will make or break you, and or will keep you again from it will keep you stagnant or move you to action. Yes. You have to decide which way you go. With this podcast, when I went into it, I really was very clear about the fact that, yes, of course, downloads, numbers of downloads helps and gives me guidance and direction and subscribers, all those things, because that's part of the process of podcasting. But I want to be very clear about the fact that I want to be led by God in my process and what it is that I'm doing. I don't want to be beholden to the numbers. I want to be led by what I feel He is telling me to do, and how He wants me to move with this podcast.
Right.
Point blank, for good or for bad, with the numbers. Right. I don't want to be driven by the numbers or driven crazy by the numbers.
Understood. Yeah. I mean, it can get difficult because sometimes you're like, this is a really good post and no one likes it. You're like, it really I really got personal with it. I really, tried to talk to you guys and you guys don't even like my stuff. Anyway.
And the issue is half the time we don't know what's going on. People may not have seen it.
Yes. Yeah. People just, and that's most of the time people didn't see it because that's the way algorithms change and all that stuff.
But it's hard.
It is still hard. It still feels a certain way. And it's interesting that you said external validation stagnates you because I was in another conversation with someone else and she's like, she was referring to an article that said, don't tell people your dreams and your goals because it will extinguish them. And I was like, wow, that's pretty harsh. I was like, I've got a good group of girlfriends now that won't let that happen. They check in on it. How's it going? Are you doing it? Are you working on it? And not not in a bad way, just in a, hey, you said this is what you're going to do. And there's a couple projects that I really need to work on. And they're like, how's that going? I'm like, I'm just busy. Like between the podcast and the kids being home, I just don't have the time, energy, or the mental space to focus on, because there's a couple books I'm trying to write. So I don't have the mental space to be able to cut that out because that takes a whole different mindset. Absolutely. And so they're like, okay, I'll be coming back to you for that. And I said, but I do understand what they're saying. There was 2 points that he was making. One, the article is making, external validation. Some people just are seeking that external validation. And once they get it, they stop. And I realized I actually do that with diet and exercise. And I never even put those two together. When people start telling me I look good and I'm losing weight, I stop doing anything. And it's the weirdest thing because I got a long way to go. But I'm just like, oh, you say I look good now? Oh, thank you. And then I just stop. And it's insane because I'm like, I've got really far to go. But as soon as someone tells me that, and I never even thought about it till I read this article, but as soon as someone tells me that, I just stop, and I'm like, okay, good. Look, my clothes are fitting a little better, and other people notice. So we're gonna just stop right here. And then the other part was, of course, what we think of when you think of external validation is people get judgy and jealous, and they try to actually crush your dreams and crush what you're trying to do. And so what I was telling her, I was like, it's really just key for you to find that circle of people who are going to encourage you and not let you slip on your own goals and desires. And they could be a very friendly person. Like I have one person that I just check in with every week, and we're like, what's the status? What are you working on? What's the status? And that's it.
Exactly.
No judgment of what actually happened. It's not a like, oh, you didn't do it. It's just, it keeps everything top of mind, so your projects don't slip through the cracks.
Exactly. So, and yeah, and that's, it's awesome that you have that, because like you said, there are people out there that are rooting for you, and there are some people that are not.
Right.
And you really have to be clear about what that looks like in your life. And when it comes to how you get things done, how you meet expectations, this is not something I've done, but Gretchen Rubin, yes. She has this framework called the four tendencies. It's a quick quiz, maybe 5 or 10 minutes if you want to look it up, that shows you how you meet expectations, that I think is so helpful to this conversation about unlearning and habits formation. And there's 4 different kinds of people. So there are questioners like myself who will readily meet inner expectations. So I'll readily meet my own expectations. But when it comes to other people's expectations, by nature, I'm questioning it. It has to make sense to me before I do it. There are people that are obligers, who will readily meet outside expectations, so everybody else's expectations, but won't readily meet their own expectations.
That has been me.
So, and they are typically tend to be yes people or people pleasers, but they get to a point where they're so frustrated that they reach this point called obliger rebellion and then explode.
That's where I'm at. Seriously, that's so me. I'm like, I'm tired of just being the person who's always accommodating and always letting things go and always smiling and always, and I'm like,
okay, that you do sound like an obliger.
Yeah. I admit that's me.
And then there are rebels who do not meet anybody, readily meet anyone's expectations, not their own, and not outside expectations. You have to kind of be very strategic about how you approach a rebel to get them to do something. And then there's obligers. So they will readily meet their own expectations and outer expectations.
Wait, you said obligers twice.
No, I'm sorry, not obligers, upholders. Sorry.
Upholders.
Upholders are the ones that will readily meet their own expectations and outer expectations. Okay. And so knowing that about myself is very helpful, but I think it's also helpful for people to know that about themselves as well. So if you're an obliger, like you said, you have kind of this set of accountability with your friends or with you and that one person that checks in weekly. So obligers typically need an accountability partner.
Right.
But that may not work for somebody that considers themselves to be a rebel.
Right.
They won't care if you are trying to keep them accountable or not. But just the self-knowledge is just very helpful in helping you craft the plan that works best for you in whatever it is that you're trying to do. So.
Okay. Oh, no, I've heard of it. I think I might have taken that quiz maybe a decade ago, or a while ago. I don't know if it's that long, but a while ago. But yeah, that has been me. I say yes. I didn't typically, as we were discussing at the beginning, I didn't like confrontation. I don't like the drama of confrontation. It wasn't that I'm afraid to confront people. I'm not. Yeah. It was just a drama associated with it. And then people are angry, and then you got to be defensive, and then you got to tell them why, and then they don't understand, and it just becomes a cycle. And I would just watch, and basically it really boils down to not being taught how to effectively communicate. Ultimately,
exactly,
both parties. So I would just get frustrated because I'm like, I'll just let it go. And then as you also said, I started seeing that I had taught all these people how to treat me, and how to
Mm-hmm.
treat me was any old kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
They can say whatever they want. And then if I
Yep.
ever said anything back, it was, how dare you? And I was just like, what do you mean, how dare I? I like never say anything. And then the one time I bring something up, how dare I? So,
And that's exactly it. And
and
that was the case for me. So if I didn't say anything, it's just like, oh, she stank, she's standoffish, she's
mm-hmm,
blah, 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 blah. And I'm
yep,
like, I'm just trying to keep the peace. Again,
right,
I wasn't afraid of confrontation. I just didn't like it.
yeah,
And I hate drama. I just
I hate
hate drama.
I hate it. I
And
don't like it.
and sometimes there are people that are grudge holders, so
Yeah,
they'll hold on to it beyond that conversation. And it's just like, I just
yeah,
got to a point where I was like, I just rather not have the conversation. I just rather
yes,
not.
yep, exactly. That's exactly how I was. But that worked. That happened for me in work too, not just in personal. So that's where the
Yeah.
obligers come from. So I just basically launched a consultancy business, and
Congrats.
thank you. But before, I was always willing to work for someone else, and then I
Mhm.
realized how one, ineffective I was, not as helping them, but
Yeah.
because there was like a financial tie to our relationship and the way
Hmm.
I was helping them, I didn't truly feel valued. And so then therefore I didn't really
Got it.
give my all. I gave
Mhm.
some, and quite a bit, and probably more than I would have,
Yeah.
but still not my all, which means I wasn't as effective as I could be. And then when it came to it, I was just like, then why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why am I
Absolutely.
putting myself in a situation where I'm not giving my all? I don't feel good about it. It's not something I feel good about. And I know I'm not giving my all because I'm not getting paid to give my all.
Mm.
I'm only getting paid a portion of what I should be getting paid. But I just don't feel good about it in the long run. So it just it COVID for me has been beneficial. I've actually picked up clients during COVID because I
Awesome.
stopped my day job, and the job closed because COVID, um,
Hmm.
and I needed to still make money. It wasn't an option to just say, "Oh, I'll just wait till it reopens." I need to still, bring in income and make money. So it's been harder because, as you said, I'm an obliger, and so it's okay if they give me tasks, but I don't seek out tasks, which I need to do more
Hmm.
of. I'm just kind of let them lead instead of jumping on them and saying, this is what you need, and let me do this for you. So that's what
Got
I'm
it.
working on right now in my process of like, you need X, because I don't know. It's kind of that external validation part of them telling me
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
giving me the assignment, and therefore I can meet the assignment. If I give myself the assignment,
Hmm.
then I got to live up to the assignment that I gave myself, because I promised them that I could do it. So then I have to do it. And it's weird because I can do it. That's not the problem. It's that,
But like you said, it's someone else telling you, and you're
yes.
willing to meet that expectation rather than you telling yourself,
Yeah.
and you're not willing to meet your own expectation, even though it's for
Exactly.
them.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the thing. And it's just I'm fighting it right now, and I'm fighting going
Mhm.
through it, and it's just very interesting to put it into words like that. And make it so clear, because, sometimes you just struggle and you wonder, like, is there something wrong? And it's not a right or wrong. It's
Absolutely
just
not.
how you operate, and how to unlearn how you previously navigated the situation,
Hmm.
and learning new things on how to um, navigate, getting really what you
Exactly.
want. And, ultimately what I want is for this consultancy business to uh, grow, and people don't know what I do if I don't tell them.
So
So
true. It's so
I
true.
got to tell them, these are the things that
And
I can do, and these are the things that'll work for me,
and
work for
that's
you.
exactly why I went into a business mindset coaching specifically, because I used to be a director of a small business development center, and I used to be a director of business development for a chamber. And it didn't matter what I would tell the individuals that I was working with. You know, we did business coaching, we tell them all the stuff, but somehow stuff still was not getting done.
Yeah.
And so I really was interested in the why behind that. You know, we talked about this is where you are, this is where you want to be. Why are we not closing that gap? It's like we gave you the plan, we talked about it, we consulted, this is what you need to do. And then they would come back in and things still wouldn't be done. Yeah. And it was just a lot of the stuff up here inside in their heads, the mental stuff. And so I love focusing on the mental process behind entrepreneurship, the mental process behind leadership, the mental process behind people, whatever people want to do, because that will, again, either make or break whether or not this thing actually does happen. And so I'm just like you. That's how it was with the podcast. It was just like, I will readily meet anybody else's expectations. So I will go on and chit chat with people on their podcast and talk about this stuff. But when it came to my own, I was like, the way my life is set up.
You know, I made all sorts of excuses. Like I couldn't record because the kids are too loud, which they are. But one of the things when I went to a podcast conference back in before all this shut down, I think it was beginning of February. It was very last minute. I found out about it on like Tuesday and I went on Thursday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My girlfriend, she's like, yeah, they're giving away free tickets. Do you want a ticket? I was like, of course. What? So, and it was local. Thankfully it was locally. It was in Orlando. So I'm in West Palm and
I'm in Georgia.
Oh, hey, we go up there all the time. I got family up there too.
Okay, we got to connect.
Yeah, my sister and cousin live in Georgia. So we're up there normally at least once a year. I was actually there for 2 weeks last year. Yeah. So in October, I got a whole 2-week vacation by myself. Oh, wow. Yes. And it was not.
That's a rarity.
It is. And it wasn't planned. So what happened was there was 2 conferences. There's a conference that I'm very heavily involved in called ShiftCon. And ShiftCon is a health and wellness conference. Yeah. And so I'm the volunteer coordinator. So I had to be there for like 5 days for that, you know, the conference days plus setup and breakdown. So I was there for 5 days for that. And then I'm a member of NCBW, National Coalition of 100 Black Women. And they had their conference the very next week in Atlanta. So it didn't make any sense to come home for 2 days and then go right back up. So, and then I ended up staying with I didn't have to pay for housing the first week. My job, the coordinating position paid for my hotel. And then the second week I stayed with my cousin and my sister. So it was great. It was a great little vacation. I need to do it more often. 2 weeks is a long time, but I do need to do it more often. So on that side note, okay. So now I lost my train of thought. What did we say before I went on my little thing about enjoying myself? We were talking about Georgia. Oh, Podfest. So I went up there, and because it was a podcast festival, like I just had to, you know, pitch my podcast idea. It was starting to get formulated, and I was pretty sure I was going to do it. And then, I mean, I probably talked to 100 people, and I told 100 people I was going to start this podcast. And I was just like, no pressure. Oh man, I guess I got to start this podcast. But I mean, I was excited about it. One of the things I really appreciated is I was honing in on the pitch itself, what the podcast was going to be about. As I talked to more people, I was getting more clarity in my head and how I explained it to people, where, you know, I really just want women to know that their lives aren't over because they're older, and they can start a new chapter at any time. Really, that's really just the basis of it.
Exactly.
And so I actually gave this podcast to myself as a birthday present. So I turned 41 on April 21st, and I launched my first podcast on April 21st and a website. So I made the decision. Yeah. Cause I was looking around, and it was COVID, and we were just here. And I'm like, then what am I really waiting for? Cause I don't know if we're going to
no excuses.
yeah, I'm not going to get any more downtime than this. I'm not going to get any more. The kids have things to do in the other room while I can work where they're not going to be bothering me than this period of time. So yeah, it was just definitely, but it really came to a head of saying, I need to do this for me and not seeking that external validation. Because even, I don't know how many of those people actually listen. It has nothing to do with them. It was just me and having to actually finish and do it. I said I wanted to, and I did it. That was pretty much it. So, but it's learning to turn that knob from external to internal validation, support, and love, and and confidence and understanding, I do have the knowledge base. I do know what I'm doing. Like I knew all about how to record one. Like I said, I started one 4 years ago. So it wasn't.
You have the knowledge. You have the know-how.
Right.
It's just, okay, what was holding you? And I so resonate with that whole point of just having to do it for yourself. Cause that's what I had to do with this. It was just like, I talked about it so much. And I'm a huge fan of StrengthsFinder, that assessment. And one of the areas of my areas of weakness are that I'm not an activator. I'm not a natural born executor or implementer. I'm an ideas person.
Okay.
But I have the ideas and then might start working on it and then may or may not finish it. This was one of the things that I was just like, okay, I have to unlearn incompletion. And so this is part of that process for me because I can't just keep talking about things and not doing them. And not all ideas are supposed to come to fruition. So I get that, but I don't want to be the person that just talks about ideas and never does anything. And so this podcast for me is part of that process of unlearning the lack of execution that I have displayed in a lot of different areas. So.
Oh yeah. And that's definitely a hard one to break because I guess we're just very similar in that respect because I forgot who it was, but they said something about, once you stop fulfilling your own promises to yourself, which is basically, you have an idea, you say you're going to do it, you don't do it.
Yep.
The more you do that, the less you even try to do it.
That's so true.
Because you've let yourself to go down over and over again. So what is a new idea and a new promise and a new idea?
That's so true.
Follow through. So you end up just continually letting yourself down until you make the determination, I am making this promise to myself and I'm going to fulfill it.
Absolutely. And so part of it for me was that I had to record 10 episodes.
Okay.
First.
Before you even launched.
Before I launched. And
awesome.
I did that.
Awesome.
Just to have the one season up front. For me, that was actually executing.
Yes.
So
but I mean, sometimes that's happened. And for me, I think I was one of the podcasting groups. I just put it out there and I said, here, who wants to sign up? And I got a bunch of people signing up. I said, okay, I guess let's go. All right. Okay. And then I don't have an excuse. That's what I love the idea about the calendaring and scheduling, because now I don't have an excuse. Like I don't have to, you said, put an appointment on my calendar. I'm showing up to talk to you.
Exactly. It's like,
period.
Okay.
So
it's happening.
Now I have to do the extra steps of actually putting it together and putting it up, but I can't say I don't have the material. I don't have the content. I have the content. So, but yeah, so learning to erasing unfulfilling promises and replacing them with fulfilling promises, even to yourself,
absolutely
is one of the ways to start moving forward and walking a new path. And so that was a very interesting conversation because I know Tavana. I think it was Tavana. But that was like one of the big things because, you don't even realize that you no longer even try to fulfill your own promises. You don't even realize it. You're
that's
like,
scary.
Yeah. And I'm looking at my board of stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, how many of these things I didn't do? I didn't even try. Like, they're sitting in front of me. I'm looking at it. This is my board right here, my whiteboard of things to do. I mean, now it's changed, but when I wrote it back in November, and I need to update it. But, in November, December, half these things just fell off. No reason at all. And now it's like, okay, no, I need to stop doing that. I need to I make a promise to myself. I need to do it. So podcast episode every week, put everything together. Now I'm implementing more. And then part of what I realized I need to do is start delegating more and asking for help more.
True.
So, because with every new project means more work, but I'm still the same one person. So for my website, actually a girlfriend and I were talking about growth and development and the other side of the concept. And she's a writer and editor and a teacher. So I asked her outright, I was like, can you manage the writing aspect of this?
Awesome.
So I cannot think about, bugging the writers, making sure they're doing it, reading, reviewing their stuff. Can you just do that? And I'll do the graphics and all that stuff. I'll still work on the marketing side. But if that's one little thing can come off my plate, that will help me so much.
That one little thing is huge.
It's huge. It's huge because I have about 15 women who want to write. But if you know how collaborative websites that don't pay work, getting them to actually write is a whole different thing. And it's no judgment on them because I understand I've been on the other side of it.
It's human.
It's just human. So, it requires reminders and, kind of sometimes, especially in the beginning, pulling teeth like, hey, we just have these expectations of you as a contributing writer, please, submit something. And I try to keep it easy. Once a month is fine. I don't need a lot of content up there. I have the 4, podcast episodes go up a month. I write one a month. She writes one a month. So we have stuff always updated.
Yeah.
But I would like to hear more voices. I don't want it just to be mine and her voice. I want other people to tell their stories. So anyway, but just asking for help and saying, listen, I can't do all of this. Actually, I'm very tempted to have my son start producing my podcast, and I might. He's still in school. This is his last week, but I think maybe next week I'm just going to teach him how to do it, so I don't have to do that part either.
See, I've been trying to convince my husband or my daughter to do it, and that has not worked out yet.
No, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to try next week. Convincing family members to help sometimes does not work. A lot of times it don't work.
They both keep saying that they want to learn. It just has not happened yet. Kind of like with the articles. They have the desire.
They have the desire. Yeah. It's just, yeah. So, but actually part of the thing is he's going to probably do this internship and he may need to know this stuff anyway. So it's kind of like practice. I'm gonna lead it like, if you do this, then you can make some money, which actually he can make some money doing it.
Exactly. And that's why I've been trying to sell them on. I'm like, you can do well with this.
You can. Oh, I just talked to somebody who produces podcasts and they were talking about, it's like their lowest package is $500 a month. So I don't know what that comes with it yet, but I'm like, that's some money. That's some money.
It is.
It is. But granted, I don't really want to do any of it. So
absolutely not. And they're like, okay, well, you will pay for this convenience.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it, which I completely understand.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, it's just now getting here and now doing it. Now it's easy. Because once I got into regularly recording an episode and putting it all together, I still don't like doing it, but it's easy. It's not overwhelming. It's not like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? It's just, I got to do it. I just got to sit down and do it now.
Exactly.
And it makes it much easier. Now, can you give us maybe 2 or 3 tips? So we have 3 things. We talked about 3 things people should unlearn. Do you have anything in your head that people should learn?
So once you have figured out kind of that stuff that you need to unlearn, whatever that looks like for you.
Right.
One thing you're going to have to really kind of focus on is to replace the habits that lended to those former habits. So learning new habits, learning new ways of doing the thing that you're trying to do, or be the person that you're trying to be. So if it's communication, let's just, because we did talk about communication. You have figured out or acknowledged the things that are potentially toxic communication, or passive communication, or communication that doesn't serve you. You've hopefully learned the habits that you have that contribute to it. So it could be the staying quiet, the not participate, or not confronting people, not having conversations that matter, whatever the case is, just being quiet. Now you have to figure out, okay, now what habit do I put in place of that? How do I replace that? What is my new keystone habit? What's the new triggering habit that is going to help me to better move forward in the way I would like to communicate? So that could be as simple as, if someone, let's go with the people pleasing aspect, because that's kind of part of the communication. If someone asks you to do something, instead of saying that immediate yes, even if you've given, because you usually haven't given yourself any time to think about it, but you're so used to saying yes.
Yep.
One habit could just be to pause, give it some space before you even answer the question.
Yeah.
You can decide to answer the question, or just ask, let me take a moment to think about that. Just so you don't have to answer it in that moment. You can give yourself the space to actually think about the thing and decide whether or not you do want to do this, or you do not want to do this. And then you can give it to the person.
You're speaking my language again. I just had this opportunity. So last year, my husband had a job opportunity, which may have required us to move. Okay. And so if he got it, everything was going to change overnight. And he was basically down to the last two people for this position. And so I stopped everything I was doing, all the nonprofit work. I did a bunch of nonprofit work for different organizations. And I've actually been enjoying not going back, enjoying just, taking care of me, taking care of the family, taking care of my projects, my goals. And then someone just approached me last week, and that's exactly what I did. Instead of saying yes, which is normally what I did, I was like, it sounds really good. It sounds like a fabulous opportunity. I said, let me get back to you. Send me the details. Let me think about it. And I normally don't do that. I normally just say, yes, sounds good. And I said, I can't jump back into that pattern. I got to break that habit.
It's so easy.
It's so easy.
I used to do it all the time. And then I'm mad because I'm overwhelmed. And
Exactly. I'm like, no. I was like, yes, it's a good opportunity. It's there, but this is just not the season for it right now. The season is just, I'm growing a business, and I'm growing this, whatever this is going to be, the other side of 40. And I need not to divide my time right now until I get these things up and going. And so I was like, no, I appreciate you asking me, and I really appreciate you thinking about me, but no.
Absolutely. And it's just, again, giving yourself the space to actually think about it before you jump into it is key. And one thing that is even more so important before just kind of that habits part of it is learning what you do want. Unlearning is really talking about, the things that you don't want anymore, and the things that no longer serve you, but really being clear about, okay, moving forward, this is what I do want. This is what I want things to look like in my life. That is so key, because again, if you're just adding information just for the sake of adding information, it's not beneficial to you if you don't really know the path you want to take.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you got another tip? That was a good one.
And again, a lot of the times it's really going to be contingent upon what it is that you want to do. So like for us, we talked about the fact that implementation has been a struggle to some degree.
Yes.
So if that's something you struggle with, actually learning what your areas of improvement are, or what your weaknesses are. I say that in quotes.
Right.
And finding a way to work around those, because sometimes it might be you go out there and learn more skills, but you may not have the time to do that. So like
Right.
you talked about earlier, we talked about, if you can, outsource that.
Yeah.
Creating strategic partnerships, finding somebody else that could do it, like the person that your friend that is the teacher and the writer and everything, managing that part of what you got going on.
Right.
But if it is a place and space where you do need to, you want to learn and sharpen your skills in that area, figuring out what that looks like. There's a ton of free resources online to take advantage of. So you could do that. Or also just kind of, again, sitting down with somebody and just talking about putting a plan in place. So if you're the person that is not a natural implementer or executor, really talking about that plan, but not just talking about it, not just putting it on paper, what execution really does look like, and what your accountability is in the process to help you execute. You may be somebody that's a natural born activator or implementer, so that's not the issue, but you need the help with the stuff leading up to it, the vision, the plan, whatever. So connecting with somebody that can help you with that part of it. So being very clear about what your strengths are, but finding ways to just kind of help out with those areas where you may not be as strong, to make sure that you're able to get done what you need to get done.
Oh, I like that. Working around your areas of improvement, as opposed to considering it just a flaw. And,
Exactly.
Basically, I think what most people end up doing is just beating themselves up that they can't do it all, that they aren't the activator and the implementer and the ideas person and the visionary. And they just beat themselves up and they're like, I don't understand why this isn't succeeding.
Exactly.
When it's maybe not their place to do all those things.
And that's it. I think we put a lot more pressure on ourselves than we need to unnecessarily. One person doesn't have all the skills. And that's the whole point of having these conversations and connecting in Facebook groups like yours to connect with people that may have those strengths that we may not naturally have, and collaborating and getting the work done in a very productive, successful way.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, do you have any other, I did want to ask you. So I took notes. You said one book you read was The Bait of Satan.
Yes.
There's a test called The Four Tendencies.
Yes. So Gretchen Rubin, she has a podcast called Happier with Gretchen Rubin. But if you go to her website, GretchenRubin.com, the Four Tendencies quiz is on there. I think it's maybe 5, it's about 10 questions. So it's not a long quiz whatsoever, but it helps you to figure out where you fall in meeting expectations.
Okay. And the Strength Finder, is that a quiz online that you found, or?
Oh, yes. The Strengths Finder is really about, again, you're finding your strengths, and it's a paid assessment. So it's a scale of 1 to 34 strengths. And if you want to know just your top 5, I believe it's $20. And it's through Gallup. And if you want to know all 34 of your strengths, I believe it's $50, at least at this point. I think you'll be fine to just know your top 5, but knowing that information has been so helpful to me in crafting what I do in my business. When I was writing my resumes, just really figuring out the things that I naturally excel in, so I can put that out there and explain that to somebody else. Because again, I just didn't have the word for it. And so I am a huge fan of StrengthsFinder.
Okay. And I will put all of this in the show notes with links so that people can find it. And where can we find you online?
If you just go to CachetPrescott.com, that is the best place to find all things related to me.
All right. Awesome. And thank you so much. This was so fun.
This was fun. I'm so glad we had a chance to chat.
Yes. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Other Side of 40. You can find us at our site, theothersideof40.com, and on Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Other Side 40.